Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Andrew.
Trevor.
Jesi.
And I'm Josh. Trevor, welcome back to our panel. It's always a delight to have you here.
Pleasure and privilege as always.
Ready. And today we are going to be going over a more serious work, but Sylvia Plath has proven to be a staple on our show's discussions. So we've gone over her poetry previously. So today we are going to do something different and go over her one novel, and that's The Bell Jar. It's semi-autobiographical, and it has frequently been said that reading this will help you understand Sylvia Plath a bit more. And we'll have a discussion to see whether or not that rings true. Andrew, you have the discussion starter?
I do have discussion starter. The protagonist, Edith
Mr. Greenwood?
Greenwood. I was thinking of Edith from the Bible on Greenwood Cemetery. She throughout the novel is a narcissist, and in many ways that that's her undoing, and but there is a couple instances where narcissism is her benefit, and I was curious if anybody else understood of any points in which that helped the protagonist.
It's interesting that you you thought that she was a narcissist. What kind of
Well, not fully, but it was definitely an aspect of the main character that drove her to do everything that she did in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was like the downfall after like the first third, or it was just her, she had like this knowing that she was going to get into the summer school.
Mm-hmm.
And when she didn't, and she also had like the edification from her friends that like, yeah, you'd get into it, but then when she didn't, that's where
I think that was the beginning
she
of
fell.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as did the reader. It just like fell face first, and it just went. But it was my opinion. I mean, it's not that.
I would say
it was a narcissism that she was just so acute and keen with her writing that the point where it didn't exact what she was looking for, it really threw her off.
I would say that it would. I would say that your argument does make sense, because the fact that you go insane because of something of that nature. But then again, it could be a sense of insecurity. It could be a sense of not being very flexible in your demeanor. But I think her personality, she wanted it to come off as if she was reserved and somewhat professional next to a group of people that were enjoying their internship, partying and getting drunk. But you could there's so many things that run through your head about what kind of person.
I found that like belongs to her narcissism to keep up like a professional demeanor, and like kind of like maintain like the fashion traits or whatever, and I thought I guess maybe like that led me to believe too, because once they took individual profile pictures for the magazine, she kind of broke down, and that was when she felt vulnerable, and she wasn't feeling perfect, and
just to kind of give a little bit of my perspective, I didn't enjoy this book a lot, because I think I just found her very hard to relate to on my level, and now thinking about it, I don't have a ton of self-confidence. I don't exude self-confidence. Whereas, like, now that you're mentioning it and that kind of narcissism, it kind of makes sense. Like, I have low self-esteem. Here she's walking around ready to, take on the world in the best way that she feels that she can, and that's a higher self-esteem. So in a way, just coming from my perspective, she's the opposite of me, which is why I didn't feel related to her, why I didn't understand her struggles. So I think in a way, yeah, she is in a way sort of like a narcissist, because she believes that she can do this stuff, she will do this stuff, and when she can't, her world is over.
Yeah, that's how I looked at it, yeah.
And I think that with how she depicts things, I see her as a bit unreliable as a narrator.
Yeah.
Oh, true.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think that I think the intent is trying to see the kind of person that Sylvia Plath herself was. She was she was institutionalized in her own life, and there's a great reflection of Sylvia Plath in Esther Greenwood, with her thoughts, dreams, and goals.
I felt like and I mean, I know this kind of goes along with, being unreliable. I just felt like she was very scattered and very hard to follow, and
the whole text was scattered.
Yeah, everything was just all over.
We were at one point.
We were at one point.
At one moment, we were at one point. At another moment, at the next, and I think that this was supposed to give me a stronger understanding of the kind of person she was. It didn't.
Yeah, I felt like, if anything, it confused me more about her.
It's something I would have to reread in order to really get a...
Yeah, it might be one of those points.
I guess thinking about how it went from one point to another in her perspective, I guess depression can do that. I speak from a mild experience. I haven't been fully diagnosed yet. This is only a bit of a suspicion about myself, but I have had a lot of moments of complete downer type of mindset. And it's often caused me to be the kind of person who someone would accuse of not being able to see the forest for the trees, even though I've often called myself seeing different forests for different trees. Still, that's pretty much the same thing in many perspectives. I leave it to you, the viewer, to judge.
But I guess that brings up a good point too, is that, coming from, I'm not clinically depressed, so I can't say, because I don't know how a depressed sort of mind is supposed to think, or how they think, or if every depressed mind thinks differently, how they, take things. And this book, it did kind of put you into a perspective of, how depression can suddenly hit. How she seemed fine up until, like you said, her pictures, and then not getting into, into the writing program. Let me take that back. I wouldn't say seemed fine, but, overall, she was relatively normal, in a loose sense of the word. And then all of a sudden, she's going down into the basement to pop pills. I was like, wait, why? I understand you're upset about getting into the writing program, but that's not a reason to kill yourself. What is happening?
That was a little bit too overboard.
Yeah.
If several things happened that weren't going her way is one thing, but one thing.
Yeah,
it's one thing that meant so much to her.
And I think Buddy
but...
also in this setting of the conservative 50s too, Buddy having a relationship with the waitress kind of sent her off too. It's like, well, now I gotta do that as well. And the one thing that was like, it was like hiding in plain sight when I was reading this, because it's nothing but like, after the first third, it's like consistent ideas and ideation of suicide. Is that when she finally does have sex and it's disastrous and she starts bleeding, the first thing she does is they look for help. Whereas before she was like something like that, she would have like let herself bleed to death.
Yeah.
I thought that was like, I didn't notice that the first time I read it. Like, yeah, it was because I guess we're through that part now. I don't know. There was something definitely there's definitely food for thought up at that point.
I feel like her rise, or her fall and then her rise again, just kind of, I don't know, I feel like it happened too quickly. It was like she was fine for, what was it, the majority of the book. And like I said, I use that term loosely, fine. But then one thing happens, she crashes, and then she's okay again.
I think
And
you'd be
that's
safe
just
to
it.
say fine,
Yeah.
because I was like, I
think
was
that's
surprised because it was humorous.
Yeah,
And I was surprised at that.
I giggled a little bit during the book.
I think that there are those on and off moments, though, when it comes to depression and conditions of that nature, where one moment they're perfectly fine, the next it's disastrous, they're feeling down, and then next moment things aren't as bad.
Yeah, it's like the mania aspect of it.
I mean, I guess, if I know depression and anxiety kind of go hand in hand most of the time, and I might not suffer from depression, but I know anxiety very well. I worry a lot, so I could relate a little bit to that, where she hears worrying about getting into the writing program. But I don't know, maybe it was just my upbringing, my dad, life gets harder, just because something doesn't work out for you doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Try again, try something new. So then when she didn't get into the program and she totally lost herself, I couldn't understand that.
That was key to the story too. She didn't have a dad,
So I mean, maybe that's a
Sylvia
dad.
Plath's dad died when she was 8 years old,
8
or 9. It was because he had gangrene in his foot that he didn't take care of.
So, I mean, maybe that's maybe what they were trying to kind of portray a little bit, those of us who have tough fathers, who will kind of pick us up by the bootstraps, I guess.
And
how she didn't get to do that.
Once you mentioned that, it's like, yeah, that was obviously missing from that. That's that character's development. So
the way that it ended was interesting.
I didn't like it.
The fact that it ended open-ended. She was going into the room to get evaluated, and they just left it at that. That could mean something too.
Well, it was like the liberation of the lifting of the jar, and she also said like the jar might descend again in the future, but and she it was more left it was like an optimist ending, but there was the suggestion that it's going to happen again.
That's exactly what I had thought. I think that in the end, it's that idea that regardless of what happens, she is who she is. And things really aren't going to be all that fine and dandy. They could be, but the chances, she's still, as you said, she's bound to have another panic attack.
And regrettably, in real life, it did happen.
I think what I kind of liked about, I didn't personally like the ending because I wanted some closure. I was like, well, what's happening? And there was nothing there. So, I guess that was kind of the point, but I liked how, like you said, she just kind of came to terms with who she was. And I feel like a lot of people, in this day and age don't do that. They try to be somebody different, or they try to change themselves. They don't, just sit down and, look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, this is who I am, and I'm going to use that as a strength instead of a weakness. And I feel like towards the end of the book, that is something that I liked, was that she was trying to accept who she was and using that as a strength as opposed to as a reason to dwell. So I liked that a lot about her. Like, it started showing strength.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked how, from the very beginning of the book, that the electrocution, or the impending electrocution of the Rosenbergs, was really on her mind. Well, it was on everyone's mind, and then there was that dread, the disastrous results of the first attempt with the electroshock therapy, and then finally in the third part where the electrotherapy was done right with Dr. Nolan, it kind of came full circle, from the anxiety of the electrocution to the actual disaster, and then the liberation of the release of the building.
Kind of a random question. Just wondering if any of you guys did a little background research. I felt like she described the electroshock therapy rather well. But I can't say because I've never been electroshocked. Has she been electroshocked?
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, is that something she experienced?
Yeah. For it was almost like a catch-all. I don't know for sure.
Their
but
cure for manic depression
it was
a lobotomy.
popular.
Yeah, I mean, like I know it was popular, but I wasn't sure if
I didn't know about
Sylvia
the
Plath actually had that experience to be able to describe it.
I believe so.
Because I felt like it was a very in-depth description of what she felt.
Yeah.
And like it made me uncomfortable, but at the same time, like, wow, is that what it would feel like? Am I imagining this correctly? So that was just a question.
Yeah, it definitely made me uncomfortable too, to the point of like, you knew it was coming when she wasn't. What was it? She wasn't getting breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was being prepared.
That made me nervous.
I was like, oh no! I was like, I felt my heart go a little bit. I was like, so yeah, she did explain it well to the point that like I was nervous for her at that point. She was hiding in the curtains.
That's what I would do, under the bed.
Do we have any final thoughts?
I found it to be, like I said, a difficult book. I didn't enjoy it as much as I would have liked to. And again, that just partly because I found it a little unrelatable. I mean, obviously, she has a talent for writing, and for the right people, I think this could definitely be a book that speaks to you. But for me personally, it just wasn't. It didn't catch me. So,
I think that difficulty was intentional. It was. I mean, because it's a difficult subject to tackle, a difficult subject to even try to put into words or discuss among one another without causing all sorts of brouhaha.
I think it's a book that makes me continue to think, but it wasn't the strongest. I didn't come out feeling the strongest about what I was looking for in the piece. Alrighty, how would we rate it on a 0 to 5 scale? Half stars permitted. Andrew.
Personally, this is probably going to sound like a huge surprise. Yeah, I didn't relate with the protagonist either, but I gave it a 5.
really,
I loved it. I really, the metaphors and some of the poetic prose really got me. So yeah, personally, yeah.
You were telling me that this was the best book you read in 2017.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know. There was really.
Because I agree that she's a good...
I think I liked a lot of it for the wrong reasons. It was some really...
I agree that she's good with words, but so is Shakespeare.
Yeah. So, yeah, she gets pretty metal with like the Unitarian priest towards the end. I thought, yeah, I've got favorite pages, and so. But that's me. I give it a 5.
Ready, Trevor?
Speaking as someone who only got a first impression of it so far, I'd probably give it a 4. I have a feeling I'll probably end up giving it a higher score upon repeated readings, because maybe what he'd said before the Andrew said, the aforementioned metaphors and all the other hidden meanings might come to light on repeated readings, and I might actually catch something I'd missed the first time. It's like with Pink Floyd The Wall. Sometimes you have to hit the rewind button to catch something, but I digress.
I mean, I did enjoy, parts of it. I actually found that I enjoyed the first part of the book more, where she was, out and about New York City and kind of.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was, and I had fun with that. So, yeah. I mean, I did like that part. So that, I mean, I would give it maybe a 3.5, just because I did enjoy that. But as soon as things got made a turn for the worse, I found it a little unrelatable, so I couldn't appreciate it as much as I probably could have.
I give it a 3.5 as well. I think that the leading up to the turn for the worst is something I was waiting for. I felt that it was very similar to It's a Wonderful Life, where you're expecting the what we know the movie for, and that's George Bailey wondering what life would be like without him. But the first 70% of the movie is the bank, the issues with the bank and how it's shutting down. But here, I think that it started out a little bit slowly, because we knew that something was bound to happen. But why I'm giving it the score that I'm giving it is because I felt that I didn't really get enough out of the issues involving her sanity, but I think that it was a piece that I would be interested in looking over again and looking into, and it. I still have an interest in learning more about Sylvia Plath and why she was the way she was. If you're interested in checking out the Bell Jar, here is the copy, the Sylvia Plath. Here is the copy of the Bell Jar written by Sylvia Plath. And there's also some
The postscript.
Postscript, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
interesting.
About her, about the book, and there's also a mention of some of her other works as well. I'm probably going to look into getting a complete collection. I'm probably going to cave in. And the Letters Home seems quite interesting, which there'd be a lot that can be said about her letters to her mother from from 1950 until her death in 1963, which by that time there's a lot that you can get out of her at the most intense point of her life, where she eventually committed suicide. Alrighty, be sure to join us next time for another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.
Reading.